Are we introducing ourselves, or you introducing?
No, I'll do it all.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're doing a little bit of a different kind of show. Number one, Gary Vasilash, my co-host, is on vacation for this week and next week as well. And so I decided that, and I also should say, this is not a big news week. No, anything earth-shattering has happened today. So we're going to get into one of my passions, which is driving fast and racing. And maybe some of you have thought about doing the same sort of thing. I think this show will whet your appetite. We've got Frank Schwartz here. He's got his own company. We'll get into those details, called Grass Paddock. And we've got Eric, and I'm going to butcher the name.
Ghoukasian.
Ghoukasian.
That's the Eric G is the most common way I'm referred
Eric
to.
Ghoukasian, who's got a company called Trackilicious. And we're going to get into the details of that as well. And then Sean's here. Sean's joining the show. Woo-hoo. Yeah. Not just doing Autoline Daily, but also on Autoline After Hours. And you got a message for anybody that's watching right now.
Yeah. I've got a computer sitting in front of myself right now, and I'm watching the live chat, watching the show. So if you guys have any questions about anything we talk about today, please throw it in the comments, and I'll do my best to ask it to the folks here.
So, and you guys should jump in anytime, even if you have to get your elbows out in the discussion. But I don't think we're going to run out of things to talk about here. Frank, why don't I kick it off this way and start with you? I know a lot of people in the audience have got some cool cars, fun to drive cars. You know, whether it's Mustangs or Camaros or Corvettes or Miatas or Porsches or GR86s or BRZs. And I mean, the list goes on and on, that I'll bet maybe they've had a chance to open it up here or there. They found an empty on-ramp or an off-ramp. And but what would your advice be to people who have got a car and have never really had the chance to test themselves or their car?
Well, I started a long time ago. I'm on the way to the beach with my girlfriend, and I passed a parking lot, and cars were driving really fast in the parking lot. And I'm like, who are these hooligans and what are they doing? So I stopped, and there was a fence there, and I'm standing at the fence watching, and a guy came over and started talking to me, and he said, hey, you know, this is interesting to you. You can do it yourself. I'm like, I can do this. This is legal. And he said, absolutely. So that's how I found out about autocrossing. I just stumbled into it, and I autocrossed for many years. So autocrossing is a great way to get started, because generally the events are designed so that the speeds are low. So there's a very low risk opportunity for damaging your car or hurting anybody or anything. And the second thing is, from a time perspective, autocrosses tend to be one-day events. So and if you live in a reasonable sized metro area, there's probably an autocross available. So they're local. So you can get up in the morning, you can drive, you can do the autocross during the course of the day. You drive home. Time commitment's very low. The fun quotient is very, very high, and the cost is low. Typically, $20 to $40 entry fee, covers insurance and your day, and you get to explore the limits of the car in a place that somebody has designed it to allow you to explore the limits of the car. So they put slaloms in, they put some curves, they put some slower stuff, some faster stuff. So it's this really great way to kind of explore what your car is and what it can do, and also who you are as a driver and your ability. And it's funny that you asked that question, because right now the national championship of solo autocrossing is happening in
Lincoln, Nebraska. Right now as we speak, they're racing.
That's correct. And I went last year to after all of these years, and even though I spend a lot of my time racing cars on the track now, I went back and participated in the national championship last year, and just had an absolute blast. And the cool thing is, anybody can do it. And this is, I think, a critical thing that we have to talk about in the auto industry. Is when I started, my car had 60 horsepower. The idea of 300 horsepower, that was a Ferrari F40 or something like that. You can get a minivan with 300 horsepower now. So, you you talk about all of these exciting cars. The reality is even a Honda Fit or a Mini Cooper or some of the smaller cars, for gosh sakes, a Focus or a Fiesta from Ford, are very capable cars, and you can really learn a lot on how to drive and explore those limits as well. You don't need a Mustang.
Yeah, that's right. What got you into it, Eric?
Oh, that's actually a really interesting story. So we started off. I used to work for SRT at Fiat Chrysler back then, and just a bunch of people said, "Hey, let's go do a track day." I had never done one before, never had the opportunity to do one before. I didn't grow up in Michigan, and then just turned into, yeah, let's do it. And then couldn't really line up to our schedule, so we just rented the track out ourselves. So just a bunch of people who are super passionate about cars went in and did a track day ourselves, and that turned into the next year was friends of friends and friends of friends of friends, and then it eventually turned into Trackilicious, where that's the goal, is just try and fuel passionate people who want to come hang out at the racetrack.
So what do you guys think? And I guess I'll go to you, Frank. Go-karting's another great way to get started, right? And let's just start with that. Go-karting. What do you think?
I don't have any personal experience in go-karting other than I used to do an industry event. That's how Eric and I met, actually.
Awesome.
So I used to rent go-kart facilities, and I would bring all the car designers and engineers from the different car companies together to have a competition. So Ford versus GM, because I'm of that age where Trans Am racing in the late 60s and the Porsche 917 and those cars have a huge impact on my life, just from watching it on magazines, because it wasn't even really broadcast back then. So we just brought people together, and it's amazing how the camaraderie that comes up when you have a shared passion. It's something we kind of mentioned earlier. Motorsports is the entertainment business, right? Its competition is Disney and vacations and Harleys and boats and people doing things with their car. This is what they're choosing to do with their time and their money instead of or in addition to some of those other things. So go-karts are a great way to get started. And, we're both on the road racing side, but I've done some circle track racing. So even oval track racing, dirt tracks and pavement track are just wonderful opportunities for people to kind of test what your limits are and what your capabilities are. And you don't have to be really good to enjoy it, right? Because many years ago, I was not a very good competitor. I was so focused on my personal results at the expense of the people that I was racing with. And I had one friend who never finished more than mid-pack. His name's Charles. And I'm sitting with him one Saturday at Waterford Hills, our local track. And I'm like, I just won and I'm not as happy as you are for finishing 7th. How did that happen? And he said, I have a very simple process. If I come to the track and I load the car on at the end of the weekend and it looks like it did at the beginning of the weekend, if I had a meaningful battle with somebody, even if it's for just one lap on the track, even if I lose, it's just a battle, and I'm a little bit faster than I was last time, that's all it takes to make me happy. And it made me realize I was going into every weekend without a definition of success or happiness. So I'm a much happier person now when I sit down at the beginning of the weekend and say, why am I doing this, right?
Yeah, I share that, because oftentimes, so we do a lot of sim racing as well, and oftentimes I'm at the end of the pack because with wife, kids, responsibilities, and all these things, whereas, you're racing some people who are single, don't have kids, so they have tens of hours a week to practice for a race. If I'm racing for last place, but I have someone I'm racing against, the thrill, the excitement, the adrenaline is still there. It's immense, even in the virtual world. I mean, I've been in a race at Hungaroring, which is a very difficult track to pass at, and had someone behind me who was probably half a second faster, 20 minutes, drenched in sweat, because a single mistake means that you lose that position. And it was for 7th, 8th, some mid-pack number that didn't really matter, but it was absolutely immense and incredibly fun to do.
So talk a little bit about sim racing. In fact, you brought a steering wheel in here that I got to believe is for a sim set.
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually the one that
Show it to the camera, not to
this
me.
this is the one that you used at the track day. So what we do is we set up our sim rig at the track day so people can experience what it's like, the transition between the sim world and the real
And
world.
describe that, because you've got like a big kind of semi-trailer.
Right. And that's not how it starts, right? So
Yeah.
sim racing really starts with a pedal and wheels and pedals, and that's at a desk, right? That's where I started. $200 used, put it at my desk with the computer, rolly chair, and that's how you get started. And the action and the intensity is still there with that level of equipment. Then you can go all the way up to $35,000-$100,000 worth of equipment. And that's, when you start getting invested into it. So we have a bit of a lawn chair with 3 monitors that people can sit at, and a heavier wheel set. So this is a mid-tier wheel and base that powers the wheel. And you really get that immersion and the offset of what we don't do as track days, which is the racing side of things. So for what you lose in track days, which you can gain racing doing what Frank does, or the circle track or the karting that we'd spoken about earlier. And we do have some in Lansing, not too far from us. So that's great. You get in the sim racing side, and you get that competition, you get that camaraderie, and you get to race against people all over, literally all over the world. Our weekly events have Canadians, Americans, Brazilians, Mexicans, Argentinians, all the way down that time zone, and some wild Europeans who stay up till 4 a.m. just to race in our series. So it's incredible.
Which might be Max Verstappen, as
Yeah,
we found that even he gets into sim racing.
Yeah.
I did an open track day with Trackilicious, and you had your sim racer there. And Frank already mentioned Waterford Hills, our local road racing track. And what I liked was I'd go out on the track, do a 20-minute session in the car that I brought. And then I could jump into the sim chair, do the same sort of track, and try different lines. And there's a couple of, I think it's Big Bend on Waterford, which is very high speed, right? And I'm a little bit nervous of trying to do that flat out on my own. But on the sim, no problem. And you can start to pick braking points, turn-in points, apex points, and the like in the safety of the sim.
Yeah, I love the transition between sim racing and track days and sim racing, both ways. I do get a lot of complaints from people who do drive in real life going into sim racing because they expect to be 1-for-1, and that's not what it's there for.
Yeah.
It's really a form of muscle memory training and fine-tuning motor skills and learning repeating, learning focus, there's a lot of minute detail skills that you'd start to develop driving anything. This is just an opportunity to drive more at a low cost. It's $0 once invested into it. And like I said, you could go from $200-$300 all the way to the tens of thousands of dollars. And really around the $2,000 to $5,000 mark, you're in a really, really good setup where you really don't need more. I mean, some of North America's fastest drivers were in that $200 setup. And I've raced against them and they've destroyed me, right? And they showed me a picture right at the desk, the cheapest wheel that you could possibly buy. It's just a time commitment. And it's exactly that motor skill, that okay, I have to learn what to look at, what to memorize, where my braking points are. Start learning more feedback from my wheel and my hands and my visual sense, because I'm missing the G-forces. I'm missing maybe some of the sounds and some of the feels and the smells, right? And then you go to the track, now you have all this additional information. It just makes you a better driver. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's funny because you can take most people and put them who haven't ever driven a car and put them in a car, and they can basically drive without hitting anything the first time. It's almost impossible in a sim system to jump on it your first time and not hit anything because you're missing these inputs. So, they talk about blind people getting a really acute sense of hearing, and it occurred to me very clearly that I'm racing one time and my sound card went out and I wrecked in the second corner because the sound was giving me an indication if I'm turning the steering wheel too much or not enough, or if I'm braking hard enough. And you don't think that it's that important, but your body learns to pick those things up. So, in the beginning of sim racing, I dealt with a lot of people who said, I tried it and I hate it, I can't do it. It's like riding a bike. You actually have to do it enough to get past that, scraped knees and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of people quit sim racing very early after they start, simply because, and when we talk about sim racing, I'm going to draw a gap between sim racing and games, right?
Yeah.
So if you're on a PlayStation, that software is in there and it's purposely helping you not to wreck. When you're talking about a sim system, it's supposed to try and replicate how a car actually functions. So if you're going to wreck, it's going to let you wreck.
Yeah.
And I'd like to add a bit of converse to that, right? So you get people who go into the sim with zero experience and it's very difficult. Whereas going to car, it's much easier. But when you get people who do sim racing at a reasonable level and then go into a car at a track day, you can immediately feel it, right? I coach a lot of people, and not to say that I'm by any means highly certified or as experienced as Frank is and maybe some other people in the room, but you immediately get their sense of understanding of what it takes to drive a car at speed. The lines, the braking points, the memorization, and all of that hand-eye coordination that we were talking about earlier. And with regards to the gaming aspect of it, I mean, this thing here, right? I mean, this, you could practically snap this onto a car, a race car, and Fanatec does make products that are literally identical, that go from a sim setup, snap it off, put it into a BMW race car, a GT3 full-fledged couple of $100,000 race car, if not millions, and then go racing.
Yeah. Just to finish up this thing on Sims, Multimatic, which you guys probably know, they're one of the premier race car builders in the world. Their headquarters is not even 2 miles from the studio here, and they invited me over to try their, I think it's 16 axis.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's got to be easily $1 million simulator.
Yeah.
And, it moves up, it moves down, it nosedives, it pulls back, it does all this stuff. And it wasn't quite as real as being in an actual car. So it's interesting to hear what you're saying, Alex, Eric, that even with a very simple system, you can get the max out of a sim machine.
Yeah, it's really, it's building a lot of skills that take to be good at driving in real life. I find myself, after a sim race the next day, when I'm driving on the road, I'm scanning more often, looking for things that are happening around me, just because that's the mentality I've developed while I'm racing. Because at any point in time, someone can call dive bombing, right? Try to make a pass. So I'm more alert driving just regular every day because I'm doing my checks while I do in sim racing. So just a direct translation of a singular skill that gets developed.
Yeah, and I want to get into more of that discussion later in the show of how any of this competition driving or track day driving or sim driving will make you a better driver out on the regular road. You'll be a safer driver, you'll be a more confident driver, and you can definitely drive faster. Sean, what do you think? Or you got questions, or does the audience have questions?
Well, I see one quickly in here. Hoffrun asked, do legacy auto companies fund any of this activity?
Not to my knowledge. I don't think they do. They should.
On the sim side, you could probably say they make money off of it because they're licensing their cars and the car's likeness and stuff like that into the sim side of it. And certainly, the old idea of, win on Sunday, sell on Monday still works to some level. You wouldn't see Cadillac going into Formula One right now if it wasn't important to their brand.
That's right. But I think getting to what Sean's talking about, if you buy a Ford Raptor, either Lightning or Ranger, there is, what do they call it? They're like commando driving school out in.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I don't remember the exact name, but you do that for free. You got to get yourself out there. But if you bought one of their vehicles, they'll put you through the whole driving school. Ford used to do that with its ST models as well. You could go out and learn how to autocross, and again, you had to get yourself to the track, but Ford paid for everything else. Porsche has the Porsche Driving Experience School down in Atlanta. So there is some OEM involvement, but they don't sponsor any of the events or things.
I think Toyota has some involvement because they have the GR86 Cup. So there's some link there between sim racing and real life events.
You got to talk about Mazda, and when you talk about all of this stuff, right?
The Mazda Cup,
but I'm not sure how involved they are. I know they have the vehicles in iRacing, but I'm not sure what the link is there. But I will say, this is a perfect time, an open invitation to anyone who's interested in doing that. We're facilitated on both sides to try and make that transition happen, right? We're actively looking for people in the automotive world, especially in the industry, to try and get more interest to do what we're doing to help that transition and really build early customers. I mean, you're taking people from the 14 to 20-year-old range and say, hey, look, this is a cool car, Mustang GT3, let's drive that. And they develop this emotional connection to it. And down the road, that, ends up being a sale.
And I would add something, if you remember my events at M1 back in the day. So, my day job is I'm a consultant in the auto industry. So I've been working for almost 40 years in the auto industry, and as a consultant to automotive suppliers and automotive OEMs for 15 years. But I've also been a racer for about the same amount of time. And those worlds were kind of separate, but I've always tried to find some way to bring them together. And, as we talked about earlier, when people buy a car, they fall mainly into one of three categories. They're buying a car as a transportation appliance because they need it. They got to get to work. They got to go places. They're buying it as a fashion statement because they want other people to look at them a certain way, or they feel good about themselves when they get into something that they've worked hard to afford, or they buy a car as entertainment. And it's like a Venn diagram. So all three of those circles intersect to some level for every person in the country that buys either a new or a used car. And on the OEM side of it and on the supplier side of it, the question is, how do you get people to experience that? So what I do for one of my clients, I rented a local facility and I set it up for the day where we could demonstrate our products for anybody in the auto industry who wanted to try out our brakes or our steering systems or anything like that. And in an industry where, as a supplier, I'm lucky if I get 15 minutes with the vice president of purchasing a year, right? One of the OEM vice presidents came at 11 o'clock and left at 9 p.m. So, for my client, I had him there for the entire day. So there are companies that understand the benefits behind motorsports more than just, sponsoring and contingency and owning teams and stuff like that. I've often said everything I learned about business, I learned from racing, because racing, the race starts at 10, not 10:02, not 10:04. If I'm not ready at 10 o'clock, I don't race, right? Or I start dead last, or I start from the pits or something like that. I got to motivate people without having a lot of cash to motivate people. I can't do what I do by myself. People have to volunteer and help. We have some paid people as well. So there's these commonalities between the auto industry and the automotive OEMs and the motorsport entertainment side of it that can't be broken. They're linked very clearly. And, it's the unfortunate thing that auto industry cycles. So there's times when motorsports is like super important to the auto industry. And then there's times when the economy may cause them to cut it first because people don't understand what it does to their brand image or stuff like that. So,
yeah.
One thing I would add, and this is probably just particular to the Detroit area, but in autocross events, it's not unusual to see a team of engineers from General Motors, a team of engineers from Nissan, a team of engineers from Hyundai, because they've all got engineering operations here. But it's a way, I think, for them to have this camaraderie, this excitement, this participation in competition with their engineers. And in fact, what GM does is on their Corvettes and their Blackwing Cadillacs that they bring out to autocross events. They'll use it as a recruiting tool.
Mhm.
They'll literally say www.gmengineering/hired or .com or something like that. They're, because all of these companies, I don't care if it's a car company or a supplier, everyone's, they're crying to get the engineering talent that they want. New, fresh, young blood coming into it. And they're using motorsports in this case is one way to do that.
No, Formula SAE is very, very successful in this
Yes.
in this environment, and it does have a lot of corporate sponsors
that does. Formula SAE and what the automakers have found is that if they're recruiting engineers and one engineer happens to have a higher grade point than another, but the one with the lower grade point participated in Formula SAE, that's the one that they're going to hire, man or woman, because they know here's somebody who's been involved in a project that is a total vehicle approach, right? It's design, engineering, it's manufacturing, it's racing, it's putting a business plan together, it's running a program. And so maybe that student participating in Formula SAE wasn't able to hit the books as much and get a higher grade point average, but they know here is somebody who knows how to work with their hands and get things done.
Yeah, and I can absolutely attest to that. Being a graduate of Formula SAE team, the way to think that you get in the classes is amazing, right? In the degree, and that's what you learn to do is learn to think. But the practical application of that thinking in the SAE is the first real chance that you get for most, right? Now, I didn't grow up in an automotive family. I didn't have a dad with a mechanic shop or whatever it is, right? Formula SAE was my first opportunity to really understand what the practical application is. And I still use that experience from that program to my job today as an engineer.
Yeah, just a word of advice for any of you engineering students working out there, get involved in Formula SAE. I've had numerous automotive executives tell me that they absolutely give preference to students that they are recruiting that participated in Formula SAE. There's also, I think, Formula Baja. There's variations of it. Solar, electric.
Formula E, the electric version of it.
So anyway,
all fantastic.
Anyway.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of jump back into someone that's thinking about starting into this and, just all the different avenues that are available to them to get in. Frank, you talked about some of the parking lot racing kind of stuff.
Yep.
There's track stuff. I'm curious how Trackilicious and Grass Paddock kind of fits into that. Like, I'm thinking, like, do I want to get involved in track day stuff first? Is it good for someone that's just starting out to go right into where they're racing with other cars? How does that sort of fit into someone that wants to get involved with it?
If I could get started with it first. So basically, this is the reason why I brought this, right? So
just there is an audio only version of this.
Right.
Eric right now is holding a helmet. A racing helmet.
Correct. So the point of this is that really the only thing you need to get into track days is a helmet in your car. Right?
And a driver's license.
Not always.
Not always. Okay.
Right? Because there are some younger individuals who get licensed in other ways for racing, let's say.
Interesting. Okay.
And are able to get a pass on that.
Yeah.
So because Max Verstappen was 16 when he was in Formula
That's right.
One.
Yeah,
right? We're talking about that type of entry.
And this country has a long history with litigation.
Right.
But in general, if you're 14 years old, you can drive a race car on a racetrack or a street car on a racetrack somewhere in the country. Maybe not local to you, but there is some place that offers it to 14 years of age. And there are younger people who do it as well. Matter of fact, if you go and rent a racetrack, depending on their insurance, you can probably put anybody you want to in a car. But yeah.
And you don't have to have a Ferrari or a Porsche to get on track, right? And that's the critical point in that. Has to have some sports ability to make it relatively safe on track.
You don't want big SUVs or anything
Yeah,
like
because
that.
rollover risk and things like that. But my first time on track was with a Toyota Camry. Called it the Black Stallion. It was quite impressive, actually. But it was just a base 4-cylinder Camry, and I had an absolute blast in it. Right, and then I upgraded to my SRT4, and now I'm in a Miata. But the car doesn't have to be phenomenal. And typically the ones with the lesser cars tend to have more fun because you're more at the limit, from my experience.
I've been racing for almost 40 years on and off, and my race cars have 100 horsepower.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'll argue with anybody who says they have more fun doing it than I do.
Yeah.
And I'm also curious about training. Do you always recommend training? And I'm curious how Trackilicious and Grass Paddock fits into that sort of aspect too for someone.
So I'll finish off my bit and then hand it over to you, Frank,
Yeah.
because I think you got a little bit more that goes into your racing that you do. So we don't require any experience whatsoever to get onto the racetrack, and that's the beauty of it. We'll help support, and John, you've been a part of this, right? So we set some stern rules and responsibilities of everybody that is going to
It's all
be
about safety
on the racetrack, right? And those rules are all designed to help people understand safe passing zones. So as you get more and more novice, the passing zones become more restricted to more straight line areas. And we also have instructors in our events and go out and let people who are new. And I'm proud to say that I think every single track day that we've had someone who's never been on a track, which is phenomenal. That's what we're here for. I'm not a car company. I'm a people company, right? We're there to help people who are passionate about cars enjoy it just the same way we do. So we will go through instructions at the start of the day to say, look, we know this racetrack. Here are some corners where you should be careful and be conservative on your approach to be safe throughout the day. And here are some corners where, you could push a little bit. If you make a mistake, you're not going to damage your car or wreck it because there's runoff room. So with the car, the helmet, and coming and registering to whether it's our track day or whoever else it is, that's how easy the entry point is. And I encourage everybody out there. It took me a very, very long time to have the confidence to get on track, just because I was like, oh, I'm not a race car driver.
It's intimidating.
It is. There's a lot of intimidation. But once you do it, then you go, oh, it's not that bad.
Right.
If I can control my ego at the gate and not try to break any records on the first day that I'm there, because I'm not equipped with the skills, all the details to really push and push and push. It's an absolute blast, and I don't think there is a safer environment to do something like that.
Yeah. Hey, look, we're going to have to take a quick commercial break. No.
Real quick about the helmet, because
yeah.
it's important. There are different kinds of helmets. Make sure you have the right kind of helmet.
And that's a Snell sticker.
Yeah,
right?
Every sanctioning body, every place that has an event has a different rule. So you got to make sure you pay attention to what kind of helmet you have.
Right.
And you can rent them. You don't have to own them.
Yeah. And we'll get into more of that. But like I said, we got to take a quick commercial break. We're also going to swap out. We got a new person joining the panel here. But first, a shout out to our sponsor, Bridgestone.
Knowing that a little rain won't slow down your day. That's what really matters. Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track tires. Confident control in wet conditions.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Go ahead, sit down. I'm going to clip this on.
All right, we're back, and as you can tell, when things are live, you just roll with the punches here. But while Alex gets, okay, we got Alex Della Torre here. Also with Sean, do you want this laptop or the Detroit Region SCCA, right?
Yep, and as well as Waterford Hills,
Waterford
Road
Hill-
Racing, the local track, which
Yeah.
these two gentlemen are very familiar about it.
Yeah, and we've been talking about Waterford too, but again, anybody that's interested in becoming a better driver, maybe getting involved in racing and the like, all you got to do is get online and type in either SCCA or autocross or track days or Trackilicious, and you're going to find what's locally available for you. But Frank, you had some ideas.
Yeah. So you know, there's all these different ways to get involved in motorsport, and I've done most of them. We haven't talked about road rallies at all. That's another way to get involved. And I've done road rallies with my kids. So road rallies are events where they have a route which is either secret or it's got maybe some math, or, you know, it's got something associated with it where you're going from point A to point B legally on street roads, so you're not exceeding local speed limits or anything like that. But it might give you instructions like turn right after the third sign that has a T in it, right? Or it might be, you know, turn right when there's a rock on the side of the road, or turn right at mile 12.2. So, you know, I've done these with kids in my cars, and I've enjoyed the cars and the act of driving and that kind of thing. So there's all these different ways to get involved, and all of them don't work for everybody, right? So, you know, competition is like super important to me. So I do sprint racing mainly because that allows me to go onto a racetrack and drive at the limit of my ability for 30, 45 minutes in a row without a break. There are other people who like endurance racing, which means I'm going to have 4 drivers in a car. We're going to run the car for 12 or 25 hours. So we don't want to run at 110% every lap because we'll destroy the car. Or you have autocrossing, which is, you know, going and driving your personal car on a parking lot at 35 to 55 miles an hour maximum. So track days, I'm taking my personal car and I'm driving on a racetrack, and because I don't have the full safety equipment, I'm going to drive the car home. I'm not trying to drive at 110%. I'm purposely going to drive at 85 or 90%. So there's all these different ways to get involved, and the difference between them is what makes you happy. So you got to ask yourself those questions, and if you don't know, try them all and then figure it out, right? The other side of it is there's a cost difference, right? Autocross is your personal car, $20 to $40.
Well, it's gone up. It's about $50 now.
Depending on where you're at.
In this area, it's okay. About $50.
All right. So so even $50, 40 to 50. A track day event is a couple of $100 on up, depending on how much.
190 is where we start.
Yeah.
Yeah. 195, sorry.
And then racing brings a whole nother level because you have to have a car that's designed for whatever group you're racing with. So you have that cost. It's not safe to drive it to the track, although some people do, because you've got a roll cage inside, and you know, from a safety point of view, a 5-point harness without a Hans device is actually unsafe. So you have all of these things to consider, but entry fee is between $250 and $750, and they run for a weekend. So now you've got, you know, lodging and food for the weekend to consider. So there's also a time commitment. If I'm going to autocross, I can drive my car to the autocross. They've got a checklist of everything to make my car safe. So I got to take everything loose out of the car. I'm going to put it on to the side. A track day event is pretty much similar, but at a track day event, now I'm going to be using my brakes really, really hard, lap after lap after lap. Not every car does well in that situation, especially older cars. So you might want to have the right kind of brake fluid in the car, depending on your car. And you'll learn. I'm going into turn 1 at 100 miles an hour and I hit the brakes. Lap 1, it feels great. Lap 2, it doesn't feel so great. Lap 3, I'm like, something's not right. I've boiled my brake fluid, right? So each of them have different levels of time that you have to put into your vehicle before you do the event as well, right? So we've got a couple of hour checklist of car that we go through a car before we take it to a racetrack. I don't need to do that couple of hours at an autocross. I should probably do half an hour or an hour before I go to a track day. So, you know, you got single day events, you got multi-day events, and you've got the cost of the event. So that's the difference. The idea that you need to start in one and step up to the rest of them is something a lot of people think. I don't necessarily agree with. If you know which one you have a passion for, just go ahead and get started. When I started racing, track days weren't even a thing. You couldn't drive on a racetrack except in a race car. There were no street cars on racetracks anywhere in the country. So I didn't have a truck or trailer, so I jumped in my Fiesta in North Carolina and I drove to Summit Point, West Virginia, and I did my first driver school, and then I drove home in my race car. I was dumb and young. I didn't know any better. Totally not safe. The suspension was so stiff, 15 miles from the racetrack, the car shut off. And I pulled over on the side of the interstate. I'm freaking out because I just spent all this money to go racing for the weekend, and my car broke. It was so stiff, the spark plug, the ceramic broke on the spark plugs, and I had to replace the spark plugs to drive to the track to finish my driver's school.
So Alex, let's get you in on this. You know, the whole premise of the show has been, we've got an audience out there. I know a lot of the people out there have got some pretty cool cars, fun cars to drive, maybe have never really seen what their car can do, never seen maybe what they could do. What's your advice?
Well, I actually wanted to jump in on something that he was talking about.
Go.
There's the individual that has the money to get a vehicle and get behind the wheel. They're a little bit further than the individual that has yet no idea which program to get into. And motorsports truly, even though it's an individual that's driving, it's much more of a team sport, right? Whether it's autocross, rallycross, road racing, open track days, it's very much about volunteering. It's about being part of a team, and the person that helps you change out the tires and fuel up the vehicle. I always like to tell people when they want to go racing or they want to go to an open track day, I compare it to wanting to be a rock star. You've never been to a concert hall, yet you want to be the headliner. So the first thing that I do is I invite them out to one of our race weekends, one of our track days, to get familiar with, hey, where's the restrooms at? How's the schedule work? How do you get to be a part of this? How do you get involved in the sport? And many times it begins with simply volunteering and being part of timing and scoring, helping people get on track, helping me suit up before I get behind the wheel, because oftentimes it's too intimidating to go and try to get behind the wheel of your brand new C8 Corvette in doing so. So the first thing that I would do is encourage people to go hang out at one of these events, be a volunteer, be a spectator, ask questions, go to the different types of events, and you will feel yourself out. What's the genre of concert that you want to go to? Well, same thing with the event. Now, if somebody, to answer your question, if somebody does have a high-end vehicle, whether it's a track day, Trackilicious, Waterford Hills, great instructors, great people that are going to guide you along the way. SCCA.com, NASA.com, whatever it may be, there's a lot of great organizations that will guide you how to get on track. As we speak, there is the National Autocross going on this weekend right now. The very best in the country are going at it. Press On Regardless Rally, which is the road rally, world and nation's longest road rally, time, speed, distance, going on this weekend up in Gaylord, Michigan, 2-day event as well, 250 miles per day. A little bit more complex. Again, no helmet needed, street legal cars, street legal roads. It's your flavor that you want to get into it. What's most important is get out there and get into one.
Yeah. Go out and try it. So let's come to Trackilicious. Trackilicious is where you can bring your car, and Eric, you will have rented a track, and you get to do quite a bit of driving. So take it from there. Describe like a typical day of going with Trackilicious.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce what Alex said. I've volunteered for both Frank and at Waterford Hills and have done the flagging school there. So just if you're passionate about it, go and do it, right? There are always people out, especially race teams, will always take an extra set.
In fact, I'm going to jump in on that. There are people who just volunteer.
Yeah,
they never go out on the track.
Yeah.
But they love the camaraderie. They just love the atmosphere, the buzz. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, absolutely. With regards to the track days, I'll contradict Alex a little bit in saying that I will take that first time C8 driver all day. We have a checklist that we provide to all of our customers to say, hey, here's what you should do to make sure your car is okay. Sometimes people even go to garages that we have that we could recommend to have that more experienced check on your car to make sure that it's fit and ready to go. Generally speaking, a C8 Corvette's pretty good. Sometimes what you want to do is check your lug nuts. That's the big thing, right? Learn how to use a torque wrench, and that's probably the most important thing that you could do, because maybe that shop mechanic's not paying attention as much as you'd like them to. Beyond that, a lot of what you need to know is spoken about in our driver's briefing. And I know the Waterford Hills does a fantastic job with Ed at the helm in doing that as well. We talk about, as we spoke before, all the things that you need to know with regards to the format, right? You get 5 20-minute sessions at a minimum at all of our tracks.
Say that again.
So
5
20 minutes.
20 minutes. And I got to tell you, if you have not been on a track before, 20 minutes is going to sound like all day long. You cannot believe, how when you're brand new to it, 20 minutes is a lot. So to get 5 20-minute sessions,
You will be sore the next day.
yeah,
Right?
Absolutely.
Because generally you're going to be tense.
right,
So it's like calisthenics, right?
Mhm.
right.
But secondly, you're going to use muscles you never realized, because you're going to be trying to hold yourself
Right.
in the car while
Right.
you're seeing G
I think shoulders and neck muscles,
Yes,
especially.
yeah. And we try to coach out of that stiffness, right? Because if you're stiff, then your reaction to the car is stiff, and you want that looseness and flow, which, again, both the gentlemen across from me are way more experienced than I am, but I know a little bit about it. And beyond that, it really is that's how, as far as you have to go to get on track. And I'll offer that up right now. We actually, as late as it is in the season, we have a Waterford Hills track day coming up on September 13th, a week and a half away, which you can still register for. You out there behind the camera can literally go on our website and be on track in a week and a half and have an amazing experience. We're going to Gingerman on September 27th, 28th.
Western Michigan.
Right. So if you're in the South Haven area or Chicago area, a lot of Chicagoers, a lot of Indy people come out to Gingerman. And then Grattan on October 4th and 5th.
Also west side of
So
Michigan.
Grand Rapids people come
Yeah.
out and have some fun. So as late as it is in the season, we still have track days at all of our local Michigan tracks, our historic tracks, M1. We'll eventually get to M1 as well. But west side, east side, everybody's welcome. And it's as easy as going on there. Rental helmets are available, so you don't even need that. Just bring your car and a good attitude, and we'll make sure you're taken care of.
And Frank, Grass Paddock, your company, you operate everywhere east of the Mississippi, right?
Well, we're kind of national now, so that's the goal, is to be national. So when you start looking at road racing, the biggest expense after the cost of your car is the travel, right? So unfortunately, the tracks aren't where the people are. When people call me or ask me about, I want to get involved in road racing, the first thing I ask them is, what's your zip code? Because if you're unlucky enough to be born in the wrong zip code, it is super expensive. So there's a lot of companies that rent race cars, and they tend to have semi-trailers and trucks, and they're, located in Ohio or in Chicago, in the major metro areas. And if you want to race at Sebring in Florida, they'll load that car up in a truck and they'll drive it down to Sebring, and you will pay for that, right? So my business model is, I've got cars in Florida, and I've got cars in Georgia, and I've got partners in the Northeast, and I've got cars in California, and we've got cars in Ohio and Michigan, and next year we hope to be, Pacific Northwest and the central part of the country as
and
well.
you specialize in minis.
Currently, we have a lot of minis. When I first started renting cars, I started renting cars in the 90s at Waterford, when nobody rented cars. I rented Ford Fiestas. And then I left for a while, and when I started renting Hondas. And over time...
Now, when you say Fiestas and Hondas, you're talking full-blown race prep cars.
Correct.
Full roll cages, full harnesses, probably a fuel cell too, I'm guessing.
Not so much fuel cells anymore. So I have a different opinion about all of that stuff. We used to require kill switches and fuel cells in every race car. What's happened is the auto companies are so safe with what they make now that I would trust a factory gas tank on a new car before I would trust my ability to put a fuel cell in and not make any mistakes in the process, right? And the same thing with the kill switch and the ignition. So, cars are so safe now. The stock gas tank is in front of the rear axle, and it's in, under the rear seat in a very safe location. And if I'm going to put a fuel cell in a car, I'm probably putting it behind the rear wheels, which is less safe, even though it's a fuel cell. So, yes, we rent fully prepped race cars today. We will start renting track day cars probably next year as we're building them, because we're starting to find people who don't know how to drive a manual transmission. So we're this winter we'll be building our first track automatic cars for people to do track days and stuff like this, because we had a couple of drivers this year who wanted to rent and go racing, and they didn't know how to drive a manual. And 10 years ago, it's fine. Go ask a friend to borrow their car, but nowadays hardly anybody has a manual transmission car for you to borrow, especially in the major metropolitan areas. Because while I have a manual transmission car, it was the most miserable thing in my rush hour drive to and from work, where I was shifting gears 150 times between home and the office. So we rent race cars. We help people go through the driver school process to get their competition license. So there's different ways to get racing competition licenses in the country. There are organizations that say you do 6 track days, and if we watch you and we think you were good, we'll let you do a race where you wheel to wheel and you can pass anywhere. I run mostly with the SCCA, and their feeling is, you know what, we think you need to go to a school and learn about flags and learn about all the workers and learn about safety and learn about that process before we let you race wheel to wheel. And then there's endurance racing like Lemons and some of the others where you don't need anything. You show up with a driver's license and they'll put you in a car, and you'll go out on track at 120 miles an hour next to people who are experienced and you've never done it before. So there's various ways to get involved. We tend to spend the majority of our time with SCCA for a lot of different reasons. First off, the SCCA has trained workers at the track, which a lot of sanctioning bodies have volunteers. Great, but they're not trained, they're not certified. SCCA has a great insurance policy where if you get hurt at an event, you're covered. Including stepping in a pothole and twisting your ankle walking to your race car. A lot of sanctioning bodies don't have any insurance, so if you have an accident and you're on your own, and some of them, even if you have an accident and you hit a wall at a racetrack, you get a bill for fixing the wall at the racetrack. So, that's different as well. So, buyer beware, do your research and all of that.
Alex, if I want to rent one of Frank's cars and race it on a track, first I got to go through a driving school. And you guys run a fantastic driving school at Waterford Hills. But talk about that in general, driving school, and what it all entails and what somebody might expect to go through.
Absolutely. So the driving school is really there to teach you about safety and communication and learning how to get yourself on track and off track. Typically, there's some expectation that you can make your way around on track. You don't need to come with driver skill, but this is a 3-day school, 1-day classroom. Learn the rules, learn all the different sanctioning ideals you have to work with. And then it's actually about 12 to 16 sessions on track, 20 plus sessions over a 2-day period. And the great thing about race car rental teams like Frank's is you don't have to worry about fixing the car, working on the car. You can truly focus on what am I learning at school, right? I can focus on myself as a driver. I can focus on exactly what my colleagues are doing on track as well. So for $495, not including the helmet, the gear, and the rental of a vehicle, once you're done with this 3-day school, you come out of there with a novice permit. You complete 3 race weekends, you come out with a full competition license, which everywhere from the Pacific Northwest down to Miami, you can show up with your race car or call up a race car rental team and drive in any of these historic tracks. So once you have become licensed, you can show up just about anywhere.
And go into a little bit more detail, because what I love what you guys do is not just teach the fundamentals of driving fast. You also do some simulation racing as part of the school.
Exactly. So
And I don't mean sim racing. I mean out on the track simulating an actual race.
we simulate scenarios for individuals. You don't want to experience your first red flag, which means stop where you are because we need to take care of something on track. So we have all the flag simulations. What if there's a small emergency on course to a full-blown emergency on course? What happens if the ambulance or the wrecker needs to be on course while the drivers are out there? We practice starts, right? We practice finishing. We practice driving around the track side by side through multiple laps, so you become familiar with what's it like to be close to another vehicle while it's on track. So we do have a very much a stair-step approach where we practice, hey, start slow, feel the tires underneath you, to we culminate it at the very end to a full-blown simulation race, and everything we do in between. So you want to practice the scenarios before you're actually out there by yourself in a real race with veterans as well.
So we've been talking about all these different ways that anybody can get involved in racing. Let's talk a little bit about driving. If you had to give anybody advice, Alex, what would be some of the key things keep in mind when you're really starting to push yourself to the limits and your car to the limits?
Absolutely. I'm going to boil it down to three things. Number one, you're entering into a relationship with the machine, right? And how you ask it to do something is exactly how it's going to answer you. So you have to be kind in a request, because if you're violent, the machine will respond equally as violently. Number two, performance and racing driving is a very concentration intensive sport. So very much like reading, your brain will tire just as much as your body. And once you start making mistakes and missing your brake markers or your apex markers, you need to come inside and rest, right? You need to leave your brain the opportunity to just relax. You may have the gusto of wanting to be out there for 2 hours, but that's going to be too much for you. So go out there and learn how to drive in little bites. Do not go out there and make the same mistake over and over again, because you're developing a bad habit, and bad habits are hard and long to break. Most importantly, you drive with your eyes. So always look as far ahead as you possibly can. It's like trying to walk through a room in the dark, right? You don't want to have a myopic vision. You want to focus on what's coming up. So look as far down the road as you possibly can. Similar to being out on the road, be aware of your surroundings.
Frank, what advice would you give?
So girlfriend and I were driving somewhere the other day, and she was driving and I was a passenger, and I'm noticing things that I'd never noticed before, right? And I think we can all relate to that. And if you can think about the difference when you drive somewhere and you're a passenger, how much you notice. When you drive a car quickly on a track, especially when you're racing, when there's other cars also driving quickly, you develop another level of awareness of everything that's happening around you in terms of cars potentially pulling out in front of you. I've avoided more than one accident in my life, because the other thing racing teaches you is the average driver thinks first with the brake. The racer thinks first with the steering wheel. It's easier to avoid an accident by driving around it than it is taking a chance that I'm going to stop in time before I hit that person, right? So this is really the biggest thing that I've picked up over my time driving race cars and autocrossing and all the other things that I've done. And the thing that people have given me feedback, I am probably 3 accidents less than I would have had if I'd never been racing, right? So that's maybe once every 20 years, I avoid a serious major accident because of my racing background. And it's not racing skill. It's not even like the best driver will avoid that accident and an average driver wasn't. Even an average racer would have avoided the same accident because they think differently, right? They're aware and they think with the steering wheel and not with the brake pedal.
Yeah. Eric.
What I preach at our track days is mental budget, right? I ask people to pick 1 or 2 things to work on every time they go out of the session and not try to do too much. When you're new to a racetrack, there's a lot of new sensations, thoughts, things that you're looking at. And while your brain's developing that baseline need of what it is that goes on track, I don't think about breathing. That's not a part of my mental budget because I've been doing it for a long time. But there are other things that, and those type of things develop as you get onto the racetrack. So first thing I tell people, if you're in a manual car, don't shift at Waterford. You don't need to add that complexity so that you could use what capacity you have left for the other higher level things that you need to develop. So mental budget is what I preach. Pick simple things, pick few things every time you go out to focus on so you can get really good at it, not make those mistakes because you're trying to do too much. And that really helps you hone in on improving little by little. And I wanted to correct something I had said earlier. I said the entry point for our track days is $195, and that is completely a big lie because recently what we started doing is we added a bidding system. So if our track days aren't full, you could bid as little as $1 and get into our, and people have done that. We've had people who've come into our track days at $1, and it isn't because that's great for me because that's a big loss for us from a business perspective, but it gets people to the track. If the money is the problem, we'll take that out of the equation as well. Because once you come to our track day once, you'll understand that the value that you get is immense for even the 195 or the 200 or 250, whatever it is. But $1 is the entry point, and we make it family friendly. At the Waterford Hills event that we have, we're going to have the sim rig out there. We are actually setting up a Power Wheels track because I have 4 kids and the oldest one's 5, right? So I'm setting up a Power Wheels course. We have 3 of them ourselves, and we invite everybody with families to bring their Power Wheels out so that the kids can go out and race themselves and use the amazing kids facility. There's a playground at Waterford Hills, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
So make it a family event. Don't use my wife doesn't want me to go as an excuse, or my kids. And I have 4 kids. Very few people have more kids than I do. So we're taking away all the excuses and trying to facilitate anything that we can to have people out at the track.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If I could add something to what you're talking about, the mental side of it, the skill that's required to do this at a very high level. So let's just take one corner as an example. I'm going to drive down the straightaway and I'm going to turn right 90 degrees. Where do I start to brake? How hard do I brake? When do I stop the brake? When do I start turning the steering wheel for the corner? What do I aim for once I start turning the steering wheel? How far out of the track do I go at the exit of the corner? When do I start to turn the steering wheel straight? When do I start to accelerate? That's 8 decisions per corner, and a track can have 15 corners. So if you're trying to go out and do a better lap every time you go out, even I'm not capable after 40 years of improving like that. I have to take it corner by corner. I'm going to try and do turn 1 better. And then once I do turn 1 better, I'm going to do turn 2 better, and so on as I'm trying to learn. That's why all these sessions are great. People talk about endurance racing. When I get 2 hours in a car, I'm going to get so much better in 2 hours in the car. Well, actually, I'd rather do 5 20-minute sessions because you know, the mind can't lock the changes down if you don't have a moment of quiet in order to kind of absorb it. So if I go out, I'm going to try 3 new things my first session. I'm going to try 3 new things my second session. I'll be faster at the end of 5 20-minute sessions than a guy who does 2 hours in straight in a row.
Yeah.
And motorsports is like baseball, a game of inches, a game of tenths of seconds, which you are striving to improve by literally tenths, hundreds, possibly thousands of seconds to break a track record, to beat somebody else out on. And it's fun to watch humans obsess over such kind of microscopic increments.
Or your personal best.
Or your personal
something
best.
more attainable, right? Like you have
Absolutely.
set a goal.
How do I get past this mental block that I know somebody's going 2 seconds faster than I am on track? How do I gain 1 second? What do I have to do? You've got to strive and have conversations with people and get the practice in there so that you can improve yourself.
If you can go half a mile an hour faster in every corner, it knocks over a second off your lap time. And by the way, you talked about Big Bend at Waterford, this fast, flat out corner with a wall on the outside of it. I had a big spin there my last time at Waterford. Why? Because I was driving a new car to me that is this much wider. And I dropped the rear tire off at the entrance of the turn. So that's telling me that when I'm in my normal car, I'm at the edge of the pavement. And when I drove a car that's 2 inches wider, I spun, right? Because the tire went off the edge of the track.
Look, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up. But I hope you out in the audience maybe got the bug to go out and try. Go to Trackilicious, look for a grass paddock, come out to Waterford or your local SCCA, or even if you're out on the street and you're just driving in normal everyday traffic, listen to what these guys have talked about. Look up ahead, get the big picture. Don't be focusing on the car in front of you or maybe the car in front of that. Be looking a half mile down the road. If you're on a track, be looking 2 or 3 corners ahead, or as many corners as you possibly can. Take a late apex and relax, enjoy it. And as Eric said, and Frank has touched on too, a step at a time. Try one thing, get good at one thing, then move on to the next one. But anyway, I want to thank all three of you for having come on.
Thank you.
As you can tell, I'm into this sort of thing, and I hope we whetted your appetite. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
AutoLine After Hours is brought to you by Bridgestone Tires, solutions for your journey.